Hey everyone, and welcome to another deep dive. Today we're going to be exploring how this idea of humanity elevated kind of fits into the whole rise of AI. We've got some really interesting sources to dig into for this one. Research reports, strategy blueprints, we've even got a sneak peek into a self-improvement program. And they all revolve around this idea of like humans and AI kind of leveling each other up.
Yeah, it's really fascinating how these different sources all approach this same big question, right? Like, how can we actually use AI to not only transform our economies, but to actually elevate, like you said, human potential?
Okay, so like right off the bat, the economic side of things is really what jumps out at me in this AI blueprint we've got. And they throw out a pretty mind-blowing number. Get this, they say AI could add $15.7 trillion to the global economy by 2030.
I mean, yeah, that's a staggering number.
Yeah.
And it really highlights just how big of an impact economically AI is going to have. But it's not just about replacing jobs like some people are afraid of. This blueprint talks about AI creating entirely new industries, new ways of doing business we haven't even imagined yet.
So, I mean, for you listening, think about it, right? Like
Yeah.
the investment opportunities in this whole AI explosion are going to be massive.
Yeah.
But also on the flip side, you got to think about, okay, what skills am I going to need to actually thrive in this future?
Right, exactly. And the blueprint actually uses this really cool case study. Amazon's AI-powered warehouses. These warehouses operate 5 times faster than traditional supply chains.
Wow, 5 times.
5 times, yeah.
That's wild.
So those kinds of efficiency gains, think about how they're going to ripple across every single sector.
Oh, for sure. But okay, we got to address like the big elephant in the room, right? Job displacement. This blueprint doesn't shy away from the fact that, yeah, some jobs will be automated by AI, especially jobs that are, very repetitive tasks.
Yeah, I mean, we can't pretend that's not going to happen. And the blueprint specifically highlights manufacturing, retail, and finance as sectors that are probably going to be hit the hardest. Right. Think about loan officers, right? Maybe they're replaced by algorithms. Or think about retail cashiers. Maybe they're not even needed anymore.
Yeah. Okay, so we know those jobs are probably on the chopping block. But what about the new jobs AI is creating? The report mentions things like AI trainers, robotics engineers.
Oh, yeah, and this other role, human AI collaboration managers.
That's interesting. I haven't heard of that one.
Yeah, it's a whole new set of skills that's going to be in super high demand. And what's fascinating is that these new roles, a lot of them require a blend of hardcore technical expertise and those superhuman skills, communication, empathy, problem solving.
So it's really not a question of if you need to adapt, but how, right? And lifelong learning is absolutely essential in this whole AI-driven economy. Now, this is where things get really interesting. We have this Invisible Advantage program. And this program takes a totally different angle. It's not just about adapting to the economic changes, but about actually using AI to make ourselves smarter, boost our own cognitive abilities.
Yeah, it's a really cool concept. Instead of fearing AI, what if we could actually use it to, make ourselves think better, be more creative, even improve our decision making?
Exactly. And the program talks about this guy, Professor Jensen, and his research on what he calls success patterns. It sounds kind of out there, I know, but it's based on real neuroscience. It's all about how our brains are constantly rewiring themselves, which they call neuroplasticity, right?
Yeah, and Jensen's work is definitely provocative, to say the least. He basically argues that we can actually train ourselves to get better at recognizing and understanding these complex patterns. He calls it expanding our recognition window, and it's all through targeted training. And this Invisible Advantage program is built on that idea.
Wow, so it's not even just about learning new skills, it's about actually changing how our brains work.
That's the gist, yeah. The program really emphasizes managing digital overload, which, let's be real, that's something we could probably all use some help with. And then it's all about mastering this thing they call pattern recognition. They say these are the meta skills we all need in the AI age.
Okay, I like that. Think about it, everyone. AI is super good at spotting patterns in data, right?
Yeah.
But what if we trained ourselves to see those patterns too? We wouldn't just be keeping up, we'd be thinking like the machines, but with the added benefit of our human intuition and creativity.
Exactly. It's about using AI as a tool to actually make ourselves more capable, not just, automate the boring stuff. But you know what? The economic blueprint also has some interesting advice that's not just about, money and investing.
Wait, you mean how to dress for success in the algorithmic age?
No, not quite. Although, hey, maybe there's a deep dive on that in our future. But
Maybe.
seriously, the blueprint talks about this idea of becoming a hybrid professional, which is pretty fascinating.
Okay, I'm intrigued. What exactly does a hybrid professional do? Like, what does that even look like?
Basically, it's someone who can like seamlessly blend their human skills with, all the technological stuff. Imagine someone who can like analyze data, then communicate the insights they find in a way that's clear and persuasive, lead teams of humans and AI, and even like anticipate the ethical implications of the decisions they're making, especially when AI is involved.
Hmm. That sounds like a pretty demanding job description.
It is. But it's also incredibly empowering. The blueprint argues that these hybrid professionals are going to be the most valuable workers in the future. Like they're the ones who can really bridge that gap between like human ingenuity and all this crazy AI stuff.
Okay, so it's like becoming fluent in both human and machine languages. I can definitely see how that would be a valuable skill.
Yeah.
But before we go too far down that road, let's switch gears for a second and talk about the ethical side of things. The blueprint doesn't, like, try to hide the potential downsides of AI, does it?
Oh, no, not at all. In fact, it highlights all these concerns about, like, algorithms having built-in biases, all the data privacy issues, and even the possibility of economic manipulation using AI. It actually paints a pretty dark picture of what could happen if we aren't careful.
Yikes, that's a little alarming. So how do we make sure this humanity elevated thing doesn't, like, leave some people behind while others get ahead? It seems like this blueprint is pushing for, like, a lot of government regulation.
Oh, yeah. It definitely calls for a lot of government oversight, for sure. Like, they want to create ethical frameworks for AI and have, like, international cooperation on these issues. They argue that without these safeguards, the benefits of AI are just going to go to, like, a small group of people while everyone else has to deal with the risks.
That brings up a really important question for everyone listening. Then what role do you want to play in shaping this whole AI future? It's not enough to just sit back and watch this happen. We need, like, informed citizens who are going to actually stand up and advocate for responsible AI?
100%. And that's what I think is so crucial about this whole humanity elevated idea. It's not just about economics and technology. It's about the kind of world we all want to live in. And the choices we make today are going to have a huge impact on what that world actually looks like.
Man, we've covered so much already.
Hmm.
And there's still so much to talk about. I'm definitely sensing a part two coming on.
Oh, absolutely. We've only scratched the surface of all this stuff. There's a lot more to unpack, especially when it comes to like the practical things you, the listener, can actually do to thrive in this whole algorithmic age.
For sure. So we'll be back soon to keep digging into all of this.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, I really encourage everyone to check out those sources we mentioned. You might be surprised by what you learn about AI, about the economy, and most importantly, about yourself. Welcome back, everyone. We're picking up our deep dive into humanity elevated in the age of AI. Last time we talked about those huge economic shifts that are coming, potential job displacement, and how important it is to adapt. But we also kind of hinted at some pretty mind-blowing ideas about how AI could actually help us become like smarter, boost our cognitive abilities.
Yeah, we were just starting to get into that, weren't we?
Totally. And we left off talking about that hybrid professional concept, someone who can seamlessly blend those human skills with all the tech stuff. So I think we need to like dig into that a bit more because it's a pretty crucial piece of this whole humanity elevated puzzle.
I agree. It's a really key concept.
Okay, so paint us a picture. What does this like hybrid professional actually do on a day-to-day basis? What kind of skills do they need? Give us the rundown.
Okay, so picture this. You've got someone who's totally comfortable working with data and with people. So they can analyze information, they can pull out the key insights, and then they can communicate those insights in a way that's clear and persuasive. Like they can get their point across to anyone.
Gotcha.
And on top of that, they're also really good at collaborating with AI systems. They understand like the strengths and weaknesses of AI, and they use AI to like boost their own capabilities to do things they couldn't do on their own.
So it's not just about being like tech savvy. It's about being a really good communicator, a critical thinker, and a creative problem solver all at the same time.
You nailed it. And those uniquely human skills, communication, critical thinking, all that, they become even more valuable in a world where AI is taking over a lot of those routine tasks. So the hybrid professional, they're not just a worker bee, they're a leader, a strategist, an innovator, someone who can really navigate this complex world where humans and AI are working side by side.
I can definitely see how that skill set would be valuable in pretty much any industry you can think of.
Oh, absolutely. And the blueprint we've been looking at, it actually suggests that these hybrid professionals are going to be in super high demand across all sectors like healthcare, finance, education, entertainment, you name it.
Okay, so let's say someone's listening to this and they're thinking, all right, I want to be that hybrid professional, sign me up. What are some, concrete steps they can take to actually make that happen?
Well, the blueprint actually has some really good advice on this. They emphasize the importance of lifelong learning. You got to always be developing new skills and you got to be willing to embrace new technologies because things are changing so fast. And they also talk about how important it is to understand the ethical implications of AI. You have to be able to think critically about how AI is being used and advocate for its responsible use.
So it's not just about the technical skills, it's about having the right mindset, being adaptable, thinking critically, and being aware of the ethical side of things.
Yeah, exactly. And don't forget those soft skills we talked about, communication, collaboration, emotional intelligence. Those are the skills that really make us human. And they'll become even more important as AI takes on more of those routine robotic tasks.
I like that. Okay, so now I want to circle back to this Invisible Advantage program for a second.
Yeah.
We touched on it earlier, the whole idea of cognitive enhancement through mastering pattern recognition. Can we break that down a bit more? What does that even mean?
Yeah, for sure. So this program takes a more individual focused approach to the humanity elevated idea. And they argue that AI's rise isn't just about all these economic changes, but that it's also about pushing the boundaries of what humans are even capable of.
So it's like AI is forcing us to, evolve our minds or something.
Yeah, that's a really good way to put it. That's kind of the core idea here. They suggest that by training ourselves to see and understand these complex patterns, the kind of patterns that AI is revealing, we can actually take our cognitive abilities to a whole new level.
Okay, that sounds pretty cool. But how do we actually do that? How do we train our brains to see these, super complex patterns?
Well, the program offers a bunch of different techniques, but it really all starts with awareness. We have to pay attention to the patterns that are all around us in data, in nature, in the way people behave, just being more aware of our surroundings.
So it's like becoming more observant, more curious about the world and how everything kind of fits together.
Exactly. And then it's about developing those mental tools to analyze those patterns, to figure out what they mean, and to use that knowledge to make better decisions, to solve problems more effectively, and even to come up with totally new ideas.
I can see how that would be helpful, not just in our work lives, but in everyday life too.
100%. And the program argues that mastering pattern recognition is the secret weapon for anyone who wants to thrive in this algorithmic age. It's all about becoming a more agile, adaptable, insightful thinker.
Okay, so we have the hybrid professional idea, which is more focused on the external world of work and AI. And then we have this invisible advantage approach, which is more about internal development, improving ourselves from the inside out. They seem like pretty different paths.
True, they are different, but I
Yeah.
think they're both ultimately aiming for that same goal, elevating human potential in the face of all this crazy technological change.
I like that. There are two different approaches to reaching the same summit. One's like a challenging rock climb, the other's more like a scenic hike. But the view from the top is the same. But okay, before we get too philosophical here, we need to address the other elephant in the room, the potential downsides of AI. We talked about it a little bit last time, but it deserves a deeper dive of its own.
You're right. We can't just focus on all the cool possibilities without acknowledging the very real risks that are out there. And the blueprint we've been talking about, it's actually super upfront about those risks.
Okay, let's hear it. What are some of the dangers we should be aware of? What could go wrong with AI if we aren't careful?
Well, one of the biggest concerns is that these AI systems can have a lot of bias built into them.
How does that happen?
So these systems are often trained on these massive data sets, right? And if those data sets contain bias, whether it's intentional or unintentional, that bias can be amplified and baked into the AI.
So for example, if an AI system is trained on data that, I don't know, reflects historical gender or racial inequalities, then it might end up making biased decisions when it comes to things like hiring or loan applications or even in the criminal justice system.
Exactly. And that's a huge problem because it could make existing social inequalities even worse.
Yeah, it'd be like we're programming prejudice into the machines.
Right.
Okay, so bias is a big one. What else should we be worried about?
Another major issue is data privacy. I mean, AI systems need tons of data to function. And if that data isn't protected properly, it could be misused for all sorts of shady purposes.
Like what? Give me some examples.
Well, think about it. Everything from targeted advertising to identity theft to even political manipulation, like it could get pretty scary.
Yeah, that's some seriously dystopian stuff. It sounds like we need some really strong regulations in place to make sure our privacy and our rights are protected as AI gets more powerful.
Absolutely. And the blueprint actually goes beyond just protecting individuals. It also talks about the potential for economic manipulation using AI. Like imagine AI systems being used to manipulate financial markets or to, disrupt supply chains or even to target specific people for like economic sabotage.
Wait, whoa. Economic warfare. That sounds like something out of a sci-fi thriller.
I know, right? But it's not as far-fetched as you might think. And that's why the blueprint really stresses how important it is to have international cooperation and some kind of global ethical framework for, developing and using AI.
So it's not enough for like each country to just set its own rules. We
Ah,
need to have like a global conversation about how to make sure AI is used for good and not for like evil world domination.
exactly. This is a challenge that goes way beyond any one nation, and it requires us to work together to solve it.
Okay, so for our listeners out there who maybe aren't policymakers or like tech CEOs, what can they do to make sure AI is used ethically? What's their role in all of this?
It's interesting. The blueprint actually emphasizes the importance of having like an informed citizenry. Like people need to understand the basics of how AI works, what the potential benefits and risks are, and then actually advocate for regulations that align with their values.
So it's like, don't just scroll past those news articles about AI bias or data privacy. Actually read them, understand what's going on, and maybe even contact your elected officials about it.
Right. The future of AI isn't just being decided in like Silicon Valley or in government buildings. It's being shaped by the choices that we all make every day.
That's a great takeaway. But we haven't even touched on what this Invisible Advantage program has to say about the ethical side of AI. I'm kind of sensing another deep dive within this deep dive.
I think we need to explore that, yeah. Because they get into some really trippy ideas about like human consciousness and AI and the future of our species. It's pretty mind-blowing.
All right, before we go down that rabbit hole, I think we need to do a quick recap of where we're at. We talked about all the economic implications of AI, the rise of the hybrid professional, the importance of like upgrading our pattern recognition skills, and of course, all those potential risks of AI if we don't develop and use it responsibly.
Yeah, that's a good summary. And we also touched on that idea that AI might not just be like a cool tool, but an actual catalyst for human evolution. That's a pretty big concept to wrap our heads around, but it's definitely worth diving into.
Agreed. But I think we'll have to save that for our next installment. Stay tuned for part 3 of our deep dive, where we'll delve into those philosophical implications of humanity elevated in the age of AI. Welcome back, everyone, for the final part of our deep dive into humanity elevated in the age of AI. We've covered a ton of ground, from the economics of AI to the rise of the hybrid professional to all those potential risks we need to be aware of. But now I think it's time to really go deep and tackle those big philosophical questions that this whole topic brings up.
Yeah, I'm excited to dive into that, especially those kind of mind-bending ideas from the Invisible Advantage program. Like, remember how we talked about AI maybe not just being a technological shift, but actually a trigger for a whole new stage of human evolution?
Right, and I gotta be honest, I'm still trying to wrap my head around that whole concept. Evolution, that's a pretty huge claim.
It is, but if you think back to Professor Jensen's research on the recognition window, right?
Mm.
That ability to see and understand those really complex patterns, the program basically argues that as AI keeps getting more and more sophisticated, it's going to start revealing patterns that are just like way too complex for our current brains to handle.
So our brains literally can't even perceive what AI is showing us. It's like we need to upgrade our hardware or something.
That's the basic idea, yeah. And they suggest that the people who actually make the effort to train those pattern recognition skills to like expand their recognition window, those are the people who might be able to like cross that evolutionary threshold.
Okay, so I'm picturing this future where there are two types of humans: those who can see and understand this AI-shaped reality, and those who are just left behind, almost like a divergence within our own species.
Yeah, that's kind of the implication. And the program doesn't shy away from all the questions that raises. Like, who gets access to this cognitive enhancement? Does it change how society functions? Does it create whole new kinds of inequality that we haven't even thought of yet?
Man, that's some deep stuff right there.
Yeah.
It's like, are we going to create a world of superhumans and, like, regular humans? But the program seems to suggest this isn't just some sci-fi fantasy, right? It's like, it's happening now.
Right. And they're saying that the choices we're making today, like how we interact with technology, how we manage all this information overload, whether we actually put in the effort to train our minds, all those things are going to determine where we end up on that, like, evolutionary spectrum.
So it's not even just about having the right skills or making the right investments. It's about, like, fundamentally adapting how we think to this AI-driven world we're living in.
Exactly. And it's interesting how that connects back to that whole idea of the hybrid professional that we talked about earlier. Remember, the blueprint focused more on those practical skills and adapting to the workplace changes. But this invisible advantage program, it goes even deeper. It's saying that cognitive enhancement itself is like the key to staying relevant in the long run.
It's like those two sides of the same coin again, right?
Right.
One side is mastering that external AI world, and the other is mastering our own internal world.
Exactly. And I think both the blueprint and the program, they both acknowledge that we're facing this like immense uncertainty. The blueprint talks about how we need to be able to constantly adapt as AI keeps evolving, while the invisible advantage folks, they're basically saying we're entering this like uncharted territory, pushing the very limits of what it means to be human.
Man, it's both exciting and kind of scary at the same time, right? It's like we're on the edge of something huge, but we have no idea where it's all going to lead.
Yeah, I know. It's a wild time to be alive. And I think that's what makes this whole deep dive so fascinating, you know? It's not just about understanding AI or the economy. It's about understanding ourselves and our place in this world that's constantly changing around us.
We've definitely given our listeners a lot to ponder today, that's for sure. So any final thoughts before we wrap things up?
Yeah, if I could leave everyone with just one key takeaway, it's this. The future of AI isn't something that's just happening to us. We're all actively creating it through the choices we make every single day, the actions we take, even just the way we think.
Man, that's powerful. So to everyone listening out there, don't just sit back and watch this whole AI revolution unfold. Get involved, engage with the technology, invest in your own growth, and don't be afraid to speak up for the kind of future you want to see. And hey, maybe you'll even play a part in shaping that next stage of human evolution.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Well, thanks so much for joining us on this deep dive. We'll see you next time. And until then, keep learning, keep questioning, and keep pushing those cognitive boundaries.